there's a conception in terms of, obviously there's a closeness and a bond that you can't really get, and obviously the adversity and being shot at and going through literal hell as a team and as a unit forges bonds that are unusual in terms of closeness. For those that haven't experienced that, how would you describe it in terms of if you had to compare it with a bond? Because I think that for people to understand how you could get to that mindset, I think it's important for them to understand how strong those bonds are.
Look, that's a really tough question, and to answer it, I don't think that there is anything that I can compare to, or that I think is comparable that would justify, an adequate response to that question. However, I will sort of unpack a little bit of how this all forms, right? So, as I found out recently when leaving the army, that the most of society goes around and really thinking about themselves, right? So the whole idea of putting your team before yourself, in my, short-lived span as a civilian thus far, I haven't really seen that, right? I'm sure it does exist, but not everyone in the military is like special forces guys either. So the whole idea of one of the main ideas of the whole selection and reinforcement cycle for special operations is to identify people who put the team before themselves. So no matter what you do, the team comes first, right? So if you're the sort of person that is the first one to eat, or you look after yourself and have a shower first, or if there's a job that needs doing, you decide to look after your own kit instead of helping the team kit. So these are really simplistic examples, but what I'm trying to say is that we spend an inordinate amount of time when we select and train commandos to ensure the types of people that we select are the ones that never put themselves first. So it's team before self always. And the reason for that is self-evident. There is a mutual element of survivability. You are relying on other people for mutual survival in extremis. So therefore, that person has to be the sort of person that puts the team before themselves. And it almost gets to this ridiculous point where, I remember when I was at the school as an instructor, I'd come out and say, "Hey boys, I need all this stuff put in the truck." Now, traditionally in society, you might get 2 or 3 people that will get up and the rest will just ignore you, right? But you had this culture emerge on the reinforcement cycle with trainees where no one wants to be that guy, or what we call being Jack. And what that means is that you don't put in towards a team. So if there's a task that just needs 3 people to do, you'll have 35 people get up and all fight to be the person that does a job, because no one wants to be seen as that guy who sat down and finished his lunch while the other 29 are working. So just to give you a small example.
Is being Jack because they're doing Jack shit?
No, I don't know where the term comes from, to be honest, but being Jack is just looking after yourself. Yeah. And this is prevalent throughout Army as well, right? So you basically get a civilian or an ADF person, and you basically put them through a process where at the other end, all they care about is achieving the mission, and all they care about is working for the team. The worst thing that you can get in the regiment is being that guy. And that guy is the one who puts himself first. So that just to give you a small example about where this forms, right? So then once you're qualified, you go into the regiment, and then you go away on operations and exercises. And obviously, being overseas and being in combat and facing mutual, threats and mutual danger, for lack of a better term, it just makes those bonds even further. And you spend so much time with these people. Even before you get to Afghanistan, you've spent months and months of seeing these guys every day and all these training nights and exercises. So it gets to the point where, I can be sitting in Afghanistan amongst, 60, 70 people, and I see a guy walk towards me at night, and all I can see is his figure. I don't know who it is by the way his body looks. It's silhouetted against the sun, or the moon, rather. So that's sort of where this stems from, to give you an example. And then you come back from Afghanistan and you do it all over again with these guys. You're just living in these guys' pockets, and you get to know them so well, their ins and outs, their biggest fears, their families, their stories. And it isn't just unique to the military. I think most people spend 9 to 5 with people they work with, and they go home to get all about them. But, we'd go to barbecues on the weekend, we'd go drinking on the weekends. And my wife would always say, you just spent 5 months with these guys. Why do you want to see them again? It's like, well, we're in Afghanistan, now we're going to go do something fun, So those bonds, how they're formed, are really multifaceted. There's no single way that occurs, but it's definitely through a process that stems from selection. And to going back to the start of your question, I don't think there is a comparison in Civvy Street.
So if there's no comparison, and you're lying there injured going, I don't want to be the only one left out of the team, that's because that level of love and is it brotherhood, I suppose, is so deep.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't like using these terms, brotherhood. It seems very corny, but
whatever. I don't know how to explain it then. Like, how do you explain it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Define it for me, Scott.
I don't know. Look, I'm trying. I don't know how to define it, to be honest.
You guys are really close.
Yeah, there you go. We could have saved 10 minutes if we just said that.
Family.
But for me, it was more, it was just the guilt. I didn't want to be the only survivor. So
at what point did you end up being sent back to Australia?
So I spent, I think, 2 weeks in Germany.
Yeah.
And then when the rest of the guys, because there were 7 of us that had survived, and the other guys, some of the guys were essentially worse off in terms of injuries. 2 of the guys were still in a coma, induced coma. So the Air Force, one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, the Air Force flew over a C-17 Globemaster that was completely fitted out as a medical aircraft. And each one of the injured, we had a nurse and a doctor. So they came in, the whole C-17, and they wheeled all 7 of us on, including the 2 guys who were in a coma. And we had dozens and dozens of medical staff inside this massive Air Force plane. They flew us all the way from Lunchtil in Germany back to RAF base in Richmond in Sydney.
Is that standard procedure?
It is for mass casualty events, yeah.
Okay. And what were your injuries?
So I broke my legs, shattered my right ankle, whole big chunk of skin missing from my left leg. I got a nice little skin graft on my left shin still. These are the major injuries, a whole bunch of small injuries that are presented later on, but these are the most serious ones. I broke 3 ribs, one which punctured my lung, which caused tension in the thorax. I chipped and broke a whole bunch of my teeth, and I fractured my spine, which had to be fused in Germany. So I've got 2 plates and 10 screws in my thoracic spine still to this day.
I think the spine should have been mentioned before the teeth.
Oh, I don't know. I'm very proud of these pearly
The vanities.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, I'm a commando after all, right? So the first rule of commandos is look good.
Here's your comb.
So
like the seal.
Yeah. No, hey, no. We're not that bad. So they were the major injuries, and obviously there's a whole bunch of ligaments damaged and so forth, and now I've got arthritis in every joint in my body. There's not just from a chopper crash, but from 20 years of lucking around packs of body armor and helmet. So, but that were the major injuries. Yeah.
How long did it get? Like, how serious was it? Because I had heard that they had said to you that you weren't going to walk, but then you ended up deploying again.
Yeah. So at the time, because they had the spinal fusion, and because my legs are in a cast and my ankle had been reconstructed, I mean, they didn't know, right? If my only injury was my spine, I could have walked around and they could have gotten engaged from it. But back then, they just assumed the severity of the spinal injury nested with everything else. They basically said, look, looking at this bigger picture, we don't think you're going to be able to be a commando again. We don't think you're going to be able to walk again, but we'll see what happens. So as the other injuries healed, I got a better idea of how I'd recover. But at the time, they were just giving me what I suppose would be a feasible scenario that, look, mate, you're done,
What made you sort of push through and want to deploy again? Because most people that have been blown up, but had a serious helicopter crash, would say, yeah, okay, I'm done. Why did you push? There's one thing pushing for recovery. There's another thing pushing to deploy again.
Yeah. I suppose to answer your question, there will be 2 key things, right? I think the first one was I saw it as a way of me to commemorate, to pay homage to the guys we lost. I didn't want to just pull the pin and take a pension as a default setting, because I thought that would be a gross injustice, because I felt like we had unfinished business. We didn't come home. We were sent home through a crash. So firstly, I wanted to go back overseas for the boys, because I thought that the way we came home was not how you're supposed to come home. But more importantly for me, it was just, I just love being commando. I just love being over there, and I can see how people would sit back and say, mate, why would you go back? And I even had friends and family say to me, you want to do what? Mate, you're done. You've done enough. You're good. Take a pension, go work somewhere else. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I want to be a commando still. You know, I still want to deploy. There's lots of things I haven't done in this job, and I want to keep doing it. So, I certainly didn't do it to come across as some bastion of resilience, as to be an exemplar to people about how to come adversity. That was never in my mind. I just loved being an operator, and I want to do it again. And the whole helicopter crash thing. I mean, we spend so much time in helicopters. You know, even in training in Australia, you spend enough time in a helicopter, like you spend enough time in the car. Something's going to happen. You're gonna have a bungle. And I don't know many people that have car accidents that say I'm never going to drive ever again, because it's just, you have to get a car to get around, And for me, it was the same mentality. I want to be a commando. You're crashing a helicopter, but I need a chopper to get around in, so get over it.